step on back. And mute you guys. Here we are. If you have 2 blocks, have them handy. And if you have a blanket, let's go ahead and get things set up now. Whoa, falling back on my, let's get things set up now. So we'll have a blanket roll. So you'll take that pillow fold and you'll fold that into a little burrito roll and tuck that off to the side. And if you're sitting here and your knees are already hurting, then, or even if it's just a little bit, you want to give a little prop. So you want to just prop it up. And what's really cool about that, and I know I've talked about this before, is that the body works like a seesaw. So as this knee comes up, the hip drops down. So it's not only good for the knee, it's good for the hip or the thigh bone, the head of the thigh bone dropping down, which if you can just picture, that head of the thigh bone has structures on it that feed up into the central channel of the body. So when that thigh bone drops down, you actually get a stretch because it's now lengthening, if you can picture that. So you're getting a double benefit. All right, so let's just take a moment or 2 or 3 to breathe deeply, to find our seat, to arrive, to bring our hands behind our booty there and just gently grab those sitting bones, pull them wide like a diagonal back and apart to see if you can be sitting on more towards the front edge of the sitting bones. And what I think this will feel like initially is that your pelvis is spilling. So if your pelvis was a bowl, you want the 2 hip points to be slightly lower, like by 1/4 of an inch than the back of the hip. So if you take your hands and just rest them on that whole pelvic bowl, so you can kind of feel the thumbs on the iliac crest, that's the back of the hip bones, and the pointer fingers on the ASIS, and which, don't ask me what that means right now, it'll come to me, but not when I'm under pressure. But you want to feel that those ASIS points are slightly lower. So just see if you can feel into that a little bit. And usually when we pay attention to the hips this way and let our hands get kind of heavy, it'll immediately set up this sense of ground. And pretty soon I notice that just with this heaviness, just with this gentle tilting, my breath starts to naturally deepen. So feel into that and breathe into that and just keep letting your hands just kind of weight the hip down. And as you're weighting the hips down, also take note. Like notice, does one ASIS joint feel lower than the other? Does one iliac crest on the thumb side feel higher or back farther? And just take this time to kind of move into your body mind. So in an ideal world or body, which doesn't exist, we want all 4 of these points to be equal. Maybe not equal front to back, but equal so that they're, I want to say square, but that's not true either, right? Because the ASIS joints are lower, but I think you get my drift. You want some symmetry here, left and right. And often we find with sacral dysfunction, which feeds down even into knees because there's that torque there and something has to give, you want as much evenness as you can. So now with the weight, pick up your belly and lift your ribs up. You can even shrug your shoulders a little bit. And just see if you can bring the ribs away from the hips, like you're trying to lift them up. And then bring your hands now onto your shoulders, the heads of your shoulders, and just start to rotate the elbows around. But try not to lose that beautiful height that you gained. So you're trying to create space between the ribs and those hips. And you just keep breathing as you roll those shoulders around. And then bring the elbows back up to the sky. Keep the hands on the shoulders and just squeeze the sides of the head. And as you squeeze the sides of the head with your arms or the backs of your wrists, can you gently start to lift up the skull? So you're creating a little bit more length in the back of the neck. And it doesn't matter if you're doing that perfectly, just do it as best you can. You want the chin to soften down. And as you start to lengthen that neck, just start to feel into, if you can notice where you might be a little more restricted or tight. And you might even notice that in the shoulders. You got a couple more breaths here, so just keep lifting. You're trying to create some space, and space and time go well together. Let the frontal ribs drop in a little bit so you can breathe into the back ribs. And then from here, extend your arms up overhead. And you might notice now that the shoulder's a little more relaxed and you feel the length from the spine. Last breath. And then take the hands wide, turn them backwards if you can, and just go really wide like you're just opening up your wings. And then bring them forward and sweep them back up again. And again, we'll try to find that length now without your hands, just with this inner wisdom. And then you turn the hands around and out and you swing it around. We've got one more like that. Inhaling as you lift, pausing for a breath, letting those frontal ribs drop in, finding that deep length inside, and then exhale, reach your hands behind you. Good. Just bring your fingertips to your chin and then gently push back. And so you feel that the throat, sides of the throat start to move over your heart center. And your heart center starts to move over your pelvis. And you're still on the front of the sitting bones. Keep that and bring your hands to prayer. Taking a moment just to feel and lock in that vision of center and to set your intention. And then we inhale, lengthen last time here, and exhale, bow. We inhale, come on up, open your eyes. You're just going to take your right hand to your left knee. You could even grab your block and bring it for your left hand so that you're not, so you have something to sort of push against. And for a moment, let those hips get heavy again, just like we did before. And then imagine, without doing much else, that you could bring your ribs away from your pelvis. So you've got to find those muscles inside that do that work. And you just breathe. You let those frontal ribs drop in and the sides of the throat move back. Last breath. See if you notice the twist just happening on its own over time. Doesn't take much effort. The effort is in keeping the spine stacked and long and keeping the hips solid and anchored. Good. Gently release out of that on an inhale so you stay long. And then if you had that block, just switch it behind you and your left arm to your right knee. And then again, you just feel, close your eyes if you need to, or just feel into the body, feel the weighting of the hips, those heavy hips, and feel how you would, what it would take to lift the ribs up away, to pull the belly in and up, and to let the front ribs drop in. The sides of the throat move back over heart center, over belly center. And you let the twist happen naturally as you find that long, lengthened, supported spine. Good. Last breath. Finish on an exhale, and you'll inhale to come out so that you find even more length on the inhale. Beautiful. That was a long time to sit cross-legged, especially if your knees are achy. So take them out in front of you, and you're just going to flex and point. Now, if this is hard to do on a block, feel free to pull that block off. And it's almost like you're giving yourself a hip massage. So one foot presses on the gas, the other lifts off. It's like if you were ever a clutch driver. And you just keep going until you feel that action come all the way up into the hips. And this is an interesting action because not only is it good for your legs and your hips and your ankles, you're also getting a little massage on your organs just because of that little twist. So super good for immunity and lots of other things that organs do. Got a couple more. You want to feel that achiness as you pull that foot back. You're developing the strength around the shin, also really good for knee health. Last breath. Beautiful. And then bring your feet back into the crossing. Keep it easy does it. So it's not, you're not bringing the feet too close to your face. But what I want you to do is I want you to feel the knife edge of your feet. So that means the outer edge, the pinky toe side of the foot. And see if you can take a moment to feel that knife edge. So from pinky toe to outer heel, you'll notice that there's a portion of your outer foot there that's harder to root down. And I want you to try to make that happen. And then breathe and lengthen up. And this is the action that you want in many, many poses to keep your knees healthy. And if you just peek down at your ankles, hopefully you'll notice that your ankles are what I call a walking ankle. So that means that the inner edge and the outer edge of the ankle are equally long. You don't see a shortening in the inner ankle. So a couple more, or you could also call this karate chop. So that knife edge, you press down even into the heel side. And as you do that, you might even notice you get a little core work waking up, and you might feel some achiness. If you feel pain, that's not quite so good. But if you feel a little achiness, that means that something is waking up that has gone to sleep. Last breath. And release that. Bring the knees in gently, and we'll take our right leg out, and we'll bring our hands so that our same hand as leg is on the shin and opposite hand is on the knee, and we'll just start to strike. And here's that exercise we learned from Feldenkrais, where you're isometrically pushing your hands together to teach those bones how to track. And we're going to take this later into some of our knee bending poses to see if we can also influence the way the knee works in all poses. And it's really good if you avoid locking the knee, going to full extension. So you always want to keep just that little softness in the knee at the end. And you'll notice that even changes the way that you use that leg. So just notice that. And if you're getting achiness somewhere and not pain, that's a good thing. Couple more breaths. I'm always surprised where I feel the achiness. It's like, oh, that must not be working very well. All right, go ahead and shake it out. Take a cleansing breath, and we'll repeat that second side. So bending the knee, same hand as leg comes to the outer shin. Other arm comes to the inner thigh, and you just start to strike, isometrically pushing those hands together. Now the other leg can almost do anything. So you don't have to have it bent like me. You could have it tucked under, whatever's comfortable for your body. And again, you never want to take that towards straight. So just, or to lock. So just when it gets to almost straight, you pause and you bring it back. And you breathe. Maybe we rub off a few calluses in the process. We should have a little sandpaper underneath our heels here. Since none of us can go get pedicures. Couple more breaths. Beautiful. Relax, shake that out. All right, you're gonna come onto your hands and knees. You can bring that block out, but have it close by. Have your toes tucked under. And if you need to, here's where the little burrito roll comes in handy. So you're going to rock forward. The forehead can rest on a block. It can be fairly high, so you don't have to go too far. And you try to tuck that blanket in as far as you can in behind the knees, and then you sit on back. And you just pay attention here to the feet. They're pretty key here. So I usually reach back and find my pinky toes and spread them wide. And I make sure that I can find the big toenail, the second toenail, the third toenail, the fourth toenail, and the pinky toenail. And once you release, you'll notice, whoa, that's a lot of work. But the effort of the feet is really key in knee health. Now, if that feels like you're sitting too high and it feels vulnerable, take a little block and stick it underneath your sitting bones. You might have to then redo your feet so that you bring pinky toe wide, and then you go big toe, toenail, second toe, toenail, third toenail, fourth toenail, pinky toe. See if you can keep that and take another breath. From here, just to distract us, let's sweep our arms up overhead, interlace our fingers, take palms to the sky. And then just bring the chin back in here and the frontal ribs back in here. And then also notice, did you unconsciously flatten your low back? Like, did you rock back onto the back of the sits bones? If you did, return to that little tipped pelvis. It's just when you get there, then you have to add that abdominal bracing so that you make sure that you've got the lumbar curve, but you've got the support of the front body to support the spine. Last breath here. Beautiful. And then gently release. Here's a theme you're going to see in all my classes this week. It's something I've been enjoying playing with for prepping for Pigeon pose. You're going to rock out onto your outer right hip so that your right knee points straight to the short edge of the mat. You'll take your left leg back, so now you're in a right angle here. And then you can either leave this right foot tucked in, or you can take it out to 90 degrees. Either way, you're just going to kind of rock out onto that right hip and then walk yourself till your spine is almost in line, doesn't have to be perfect, with your front thigh. And you squeeze the inner thighs. See if you can find the inner thighs here. Squeeze them like you're trying to squeeze the bottom of a toothpaste tube. Adjust if you need to. If you need to go a little left or a little right to make this pose work for you. And then envision the central channel of your body and see if you can remember that twist we did earlier. And the forearms press down and slightly forward. That gives us some abdominal brace. And then we see if we can bring the ribs away from the hips. So there's an anchoring of the hips moving down and of the ribs moving up. And you just keep breathing here, just trying to find some length in the body. And you might find that you're getting in a little IT band outer right hip stretch, those external rotators, which can kind of wreak havoc on the knee, both the IT band and the external rotators when they get too tight. Last breath. Walk yourself gently back. And you're going to take this right leg and you're going to send it straight out. So now it's just straight perpendicular to the mat. You're going to walk your hands back to your forearm and you're going to take your back leg and try to turn it in and bring yourself up a little bit. So it looks a little bit like forearm plank. This is a variation of Bridget's cross. We're going to right away just use our abdominals, create some abdominal strength. See if we can squeeze the inner thighs, lengthen the spine, and then see if you can lay that hip back down a little bit. If it's too much, take a break and roll more towards the outer edge. But if you can, squeeze those thighs and get that length through the IT band, you'll be grateful later on. Okay, release that. You're going to swing that right leg now back so it's in line with the mat, and you can take this block and place it in between your shoulder and your ear there. So you're supported, the head's just not hanging. You're gonna bend the bottom leg a little bit. You're gonna sweep the top leg back and see if you can catch it with your other hand, or your same hand as same leg. So you're getting a thigh stretch, another really important thing to do when you have knees that are wonky. And you'll notice if you get any back tightening here that you need to abdominally brace. So kind of think about for a moment, when I say think, I really mean feel. Feel into the body about those sits bones. Like if you were sitting on them, are you sitting on the back edge or are you sitting on the front edge? And then you find those abdominals, bring them in and up as if the hips could weight down towards the knee and the ribs could move up towards the crown. One more breath. Beautiful, little thigh stretch. Good. We're going to try that whole sequence on the other side. So gently walk yourself up. You can come onto your knees in Vajrasana and you can take a little breather, a little pause, a little sensation check, and just notice the size difference between your right side body and your left side body. My left side body feels all shrunken. So we want to send like juice into the body by coming onto that side. So let's sit onto our left hip. You're going to make your left knee point straight to the front of the mat. You'll take your right leg back so you're at a right angle. And then you can remember the knife edge of your front foot especially. You have choices here. You can leave that foot where it is, or you can bring it to a right angle. Never, never, never bring it into a place where your knee hurts. But I find usually that this feels pretty good on most people. And I'm feeling there's the knife edge of my foot that I got to know a little earlier. And then I walk myself down onto my forearms. Right away, I try to squeeze the inner thighs, pick up the belly. I can adjust here. So I can adjust right or left for my particular body into a way that feels good, not too stressful. And I squeeze those inner thighs and I pick up the waistline even as the hips root down. And I see if I can lift those ribs up towards the crown, getting a really sweet stretch through my QL. That's the muscle that attaches the back of the hip onto the ribs. And sometimes, especially if you have spinal imbalances, that gets really tight, or things like sciatica. And this also gets into that outer hip that can get so crazy tight that it causes sciatica. We've got one more breath. Okay, you're just gently going to come out of that pose, and you're going to sneak that leg straight off to the right. So that left leg is going to cross across the long edge of the mat, and then you come onto your forearms, and you try to rotate the hips around so you can step up into forearm plank. And you breathe, you let your abdominals help you here. They lift up from the floor. And you squeeze those inner thighs so you override the external rotators. One more breath. If you can, you try to lay that hip down. Just see how that feels for you. If that's too much, just adjust back onto the outer hip. Otherwise, you can squeeze yourself more towards the outer knee. Good. Last breath there. Beautiful. And then come on up. Release that and come on back onto your knees, your shins in Vajrasana. And just feel into that for a moment and see if you're evenly puffy, alive, stretched. Beautiful. Last breath. Just note where your feet are. From here, you're going to swing your left leg forward. And here's where we get back into that same idea we did with our hands, the shins in, the thighs out. So you're going to keep your right hand on the floor, but the left hand is going to hug onto the outer left shin. And you're going to try to push it towards the center line. Now, here's the balance part of that. If you push too hard, you'll rock onto the inner edge of the foot and the knee will collapse inwardly. So you have to keep the feet strong, and you gently push that shin bone towards the center line as you pull back on the inner left thigh and try to widen it apart. So you almost are going to get a stretch across the belly. One more breath here. And here's one more word for the wise. You want this knee to be stacked right over the ankle So you don't want it to go farther than the ankle, and you don't want it to be behind the ankle. So this precision is really healthy for the knee. Last breath. And release that out. Rock it on back and sit back in Vajrasana and just take a moment and notice that big difference. So what I notice is that my left sitting bone is actually clearer and heavier, like it has more clarity. So let's see if we can bring that to the right side as well. So we're going to rock up and step forward. This is just really some really mindful yoga practices, which will help you as you move into other poses. So I'm going to take my right hand and I'm going to place it on the outer right shin and I'm going to push, but my knee's not going to let that pushing happen too much. It's going to keep the tracking over the second toe. And as I push that in, I'm going to find my inner right thigh from the inner knee back to the inner right thigh. I'm going to try to widen that out to the right. So you almost get a stretch across the belly. And you're just breathing and you're making sure the knee is stacked right over the second toe. The arches are lifted. And just getting a big stretch here. One more breath. This is super good for psoas lengthening and widening. Last breath. And gently release that and sit on back in Vajrasana. See if you just got that same clarity with the right side of the body. Take a cleansing breath. We're going to try that same thing in long lunge or a straight leg lunge. So you're going to rock up. Now this is optional. If that felt good to you and you want to repeat it, try it. Otherwise, if you want to straighten the back leg, you can. Just make sure that left knee is really stacked over the ankle. The right hand is on the floor. I'm going to take my left hand and I'm going to try to push that left shin to the right. As I do that, the inner right knee and the inner right hip try to widen out. And you might notice too that at some point the right hip likes to lift up there and get square with the left one. And you just breathe here and appreciate the stretching. Adjust if you need to. Like I just noticed my knee migrated back, so I gotta get it back on track here. I can lift the toes and the arches and the belly, and I can even stretch the right hip out to the right. Last breath and release. Sit on back, bring that leg back, and take a moment to see the clarity that just got even deeper. Like it's like you're polishing a mirror, and there's just more and more clarity all the time. So here we go. Second side. So coming up, bring that right leg forward. Remember, you can do first variation, or if you want to try straight leg lunge, you can. You're going to bring the right hand to the outer right shin, and you're just going to watch that that knee is tracking right over second and third toe, even though you're trying to push it to the left. The inner thigh from the inner knee to the inner thigh on that right leg tries to swing out and widen through the belly. And you might even notice the left hip starts to feel, oh, I want to be square too. And you just breathe and you work and you're getting this deep internal stretch. And all this alignment work teaches the bones where they should be, which helps you in the long run. One last breath, pressing, working, opening isometrically, and release that. And step on back and see how well that mirror is polished, and take a cleansing breath. That should feel pretty good to your back as well. So we're going to grab our burrito roll, and you might even grab your blocks here. We're going to place that burrito roll towards the front of the mat and the blocks in front of them, or a chair or something, so that we feel we have a little support. Step up onto the burrito roll so the mound of the big toe and pinky toe is on that roll. Your knees are soft and they're noting where they're tracking. So if you could take your hands here on the outer shins again, you're just going to gently press, but there's going to be no collapse. They're so smart. They're getting smarter and smarter as you work. And as you press them together, the inner thighs are going to track wide back and apart. And you're going to lift the sitting bones to the sky. And you just go as far as works for you. Meanwhile, your eyes are noting what the feet are doing, what the shins are doing. And from inner knee to inner thigh, you go wide back and apart. Last breath. And then if you can, you place your hands or your elbows on your blocks, chair, whatever, and you let your head hang for one final big stretch through the back line of the body. Beautiful. And keep that burrito roll there. Hands can come to the floor as you bend your knees deeply. Swing your right leg back to a lunge. And now you might just get a little more stretch in the Achilles here. If that's not enough for you, it's not quite enough for me, I'm going to take one of my blocks and place it under the big toe and pinky toe mound. And I'm going to reach it and pull it up and just lean forward a little bit, remembering my shins in, thighs back and apart action. Last breath. And then we're going to switch. We'll rock forward and back through Uttanasana. You can do as many rocks as you need to. Sometimes it's nice to get a little hamstring stretch here as you rock. So take your time, have fun with it. And then as you're ready, that back leg gets straight and it pushes you forward, standing forward fold. If you've got that burrito roll still there, you could step up onto that. Otherwise, you're gonna bend your knees deeply, hands to the floor, step the left leg back to a lunge. You grab the block and you place it underneath the big toe and the pinky toe mound, and you can grab the far end of that block and just bring it up a little bit. You just get a nice stretch. And then you remember your tracking. You remember your internal work here. So it's not just luck that we get stronger and better. It's learning to activate the muscles that are proper for the body to open. So the shin is moving isometrically inwardly, and from the inner knee to the inner hip, I try to go wide, back and apart. Last breath. And release on that. We're going to move back into downward facing dog. And just so you make yourself even, if you did a little bit of rocking for your hamstring, do it here too. And then go ahead and plant your hands as you're ready and move into downward facing dog. And I want you to just play or pendiculate in this downward facing dog, which means I want you to stretch like you're yawning, like you just got out of bed and you want to get into those sticky places of the body. And you just go for it. Let's just get to know where I'm sticky and how I can use my abdominals and my movement to bring a little bit more life into that part of the body. You're breathing steadily. You can groan. Nobody can hear you. Get into those places that are sticky. Okay, we're coming to center. We're lifting the hips up to the sky as high as they can go. I'm on my tippy toes. And then I'm going to exhale, push my hands forward as I bend my knees and take my hips back. So I look like I'm getting ready to do a frog jump. And you can do just a little bit of pulsing here, unless that's hard on your knees. And then inhale to tippy toes, exhale back to downward facing dog. And we'll do that a couple more times. So you inhale to tippy toes, exhale, bend your knees, and just pulse back a couple times. So you just wake up those legs, then inhale to tippy toes and drop your heels down. We've got one more. Inhale up. Exhale, bend knees, press your hands down and forward as the hips go back. You can pulse for a moment. I want your legs to feel strong and active. Inhale, push with your legs and come into plank pose. Good abdominal work here means that with our bodies straight like a plank, we pull the lower abs, the middle abs, and the upper abs onto the body, and we just take the sides of the throat up as well so that it's in line with the heart, in line with the belly. Last breath. Exhale, release knees to the floor. Make your way down onto your tummy, slowly, carefully, mindfully, and then just take your hands straight overhead in, we call this Danda Pranam or Superwoman Pose. Either way, roll your thighs inwardly so you feel big toenail, second toenail, third toenail,
fourth toenail, pinky toenail, pressing down on the floor. Rest your forehead on the mat and just feel the stretch for the back side of the body. It's a side of the body that doesn't get as much attention because we can't see it. Another big deep breath. See if you can breathe right into the ribs. Beautiful. And then bring your hands in so they're right underneath your forehead. We're going to tuck our toes. If you haven't done this one with me yet, it takes a while to get, but trust me, this is such a great pose. It's really changed my life and my practice. So the knees stay down, the toes stay down, but we try to lift the booty off the floor. So we're trying to make just a nice big lumbar curve and try to activate and wake up the muscles that go around the low spine. My feet are together. I'm using my abdominals and I'm lifting. And it's going to take me a couple breaths to get where I want to get. So I'm going to take my time. Feet, legs together. Sitting bones back, lifting and apart. Last breath. And release. Beautiful. From here, come up onto forearms for a little Sphinx. You can do Sphinx in two ways. If you know that you've got a little scoliosis, here's a fun way to do Sphinx. You can tuck the toe on one side of the body, just one leg, and see how that activates the muscles up the back. If that's your weak side, this is a good one to do. If that doesn't seem to do anything, then you untuck that and try the other one. And everybody can benefit from this really because we all have one side that's really strong and tends to be tighter, and one side that's a little more mobile and flexible but tends to be weaker. So you can go back and forth by tucking toes and finding the strength of that leg pushing and activating muscles all the way up into the back, even up into the back ribs if possible. And then last switcheroo, so we do the other one. And you just feel those muscles waking up. I have one side that really gets it and another side that's a little bit lazy. Beautiful. And then release your toes, but keep your body as upright as you think you can keep it. So here's a trick or an idea. Squeeze the inner thighs and feel how that uplifts the spine, and then see if you can keep as high as possible and take your arms behind you. And then you lift your toes. So you're squeezing those inner legs all the way up into the body. You roll the shoulders and you lift up. One more breath. Beautiful. From here, you're going to bring your hands down by your side. My elbows are straight back, pointing towards the back of the mat. I inhale up and into tabletop. Big toes touching, knees wide and apart. Child's pose. And take your time getting into these poses. Maybe this is a sticky place for you, or maybe not. And you just find that central channel and see if you can hug around it. And then you're going to walk your hands to the right until your spine is in line with your thigh. You're going to walk your left hands forward a little bit so you get a little more stretch through your left side of your body. And then you're going to walk to the left. And you're going to walk your right hand forward a little bit. Try to get that spine as best in line with the thigh as possible. The head should neither hang nor the chin pop out. So you want to find this neutral space for your neck where the sides of the throat are lifting up. Come back to center. We're going to inhale to hands and knees. We've got one more pose for just flexing the spine. And I'm going to ask you to do this in this tempo that feels healthy to you. So some of you will really like a really slow movement, and some of you are going to feel like you want a really, more rhythmic movement. So you're going to step down on your right hand and right knee, and you're going to open up your left arm to the sky. And I want you to try to stack your shoulders right one over the other. Now it feels good more rhythmically Then as you exhale, you drop the hand down and through the other arm, and then you inhale right back up again. That would be the rhythmic version. Otherwise, you stay down there and you drop your shoulder to the floor. And you breathe and find the stretch. So yogi's choice there, either rhythmic, flying, child's twist, or a more static one where you just enjoy the opportunity to find your abdominals and your hips moving back and apart equally. And you're just breathing. I'll give you one more breath to make your choice there. And then you just bring your hands back to tabletop again. We'll go second side. So you're going to stand down on your left hand as you open your right arm to the sky. See if you can stack your shoulders one over the other. And you might notice how both have to get involved to make that happen. This is really good. You're creating strength and infrastructure around the shoulder joint. If you want to be more rhythmic, then you swing that through all the way down to the right shoulder and then back up again. If you like the more static stretch, then make yourself happy with that. And just, you get to stay there and find your abdominal support and the hips both moving back and apart. And the stretch, last breath for your choice. Exhale, release it on back. You're going to walk your knees forward, bringing your right knee behind your left knee like a sandwich. My feet are wide like a triangle, my knee being the apex of the triangle. I press my hands slightly forward as I pull my hips back, and I'm working to get them to come back symmetrically. So it's going to be easier for one hip to try to go back faster. You're just going to go back so you get into those outer hips. Sometimes I have to kind of scoop my calf out of the way and breathe. Abdominals are supporting the spine and just feeling that lengthening and that hip stretch. So we know that when our knees hurt, it's generally a hip ankle issue. Either the ankles are too weak and the hips are too tight. Usually that's a constellation that causes some knee pain. Come on up. You're going to switch sides on that. So right knee, left knee hugs behind. We make a triangle, the knees being the apex, feet wide. We press our hands forward and down as the hips try to pull back symmetrically. And we breathe. One more breath. Can you squeeze the inner thighs to keep that mind-body connection to spine? And release. Come on up. You're going to unravel your legs, but keep your ankles crossed so you can just sit back through. Let's bring a block. Let's do an inversion to finish up here. So you're going to roll down onto your back and bring your hips up onto your block so you feel comfortable. The block is really supporting the low back. All this week we're getting lots of opportunities to do legs up the wall pose. So you just take those legs up into the air. Note that if you have a free wall, this would be really, really great up the wall. I highly recommend this pose for those of us whose backs get tight during the day. Just 10 minutes a day of this pose will help ground your thighs, bring space between your hips and your ribs, which is really important for back health. And for immunity, so you can, so yogi's choice again. I love to give choices so that you know that you can make this your own practice. So if you want more immunity stuff, you bring your hands and feet up and you take and make circles. So we just do all we can to support lymphatic movement and drainage. Otherwise, just be happy being quiet and still and your legs up the wall. And then let's go the other way. Okay, one of my new favorites is doing the feet is that you're trying to squeeze the toes. It's not like a pointed toe. It's like you're flexing and you're trying to point. And then you take your hands, same thing. It's look like a little puppy dog, like you're begging. And you try to get your fingertips to touch your own inner wrist, like you're trying to take your own pulse. And you just squeeze there. And you're squeezing a lot of lymphatic fluid down out of the hands and feet that get it a lot because they're the distal ends of the body and the nervous system. Last breath, you want to really squeeze here. Good. And then release and shake it out. And take a big deep breath here. And then you can bring your feet to the floor, lift up your hips so that the block comes out, but right underneath your feet. And then you take your feet into prayer. So the soles of the feet are touching. And if that feels tender on your hips somehow, then maybe you want to have your fists underneath your outer hips if that feels like too much of a stretch. And you can even bring your wrists in and under those outer hips so you just have a little bit more support there. And you let the inner thighs open up. And you just breathe and feel that gentle stretch in the pelvic floor. I like to say that when you're doing this pose, it's not important how wide your knees go. It is important how you let go of your inner thighs to go wide so that you get a little nice stretch through the pelvic floor and you get a sweet lift in the lumbar spine. Well, that always benefits us to get the hips heavy and the lumbar spine lifted. And you breathe there. You might notice that as the hips get more weighted, that your breath automatically deepens. And because we're out of time here, this is where I'm going to leave you. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to email or text me. Otherwise, I hope that you'll move into Shavasana after another few moments here, and that you'll just rest there for 5 to 10 minutes and let all the goodness of your practice sink in. Thanks for joining me. Namaste.